Test. 1, 2, test. What up, everyone? Mune XP back on the ones and twos. Coming back to you with an all new episode of Jazzy Talk tonight. Really pleased to have with me the event director for Fight Kingdom, Zafo. What up, Zafo? Thanks for joining us tonight on Jazzy Talk. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great. I'm a
And
big fan.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Zafo, tonight we're gonna talk a little bit about your background in the FGC and elsewhere. We're definitely gonna hype up Fight Kingdom. Um, shout outs to Fight Kingdom. I'm a big fan too with the branding and everything. And so, hopefully, the people who watch this will get a chance to know more about your history with the FGC, and
sure.
yeah, and let's hype up Fight Kingdom and see if we can get some people to come through.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I know that the Pacific Northwest, has a history in fighting games. Maybe not as notable as maybe some other regions, and
We're
so
scrappy. We got a lot of heart, but
yeah.
not so many championship belts. Yeah,
But it's really cool that you're trying to pick up the mantle for that region. I know that there have been events before, like Northwest Majors, for example.
right.
But I'm glad that Fight Kingdom has kind of picked up the baton and tried to carry the spirit of the FGC and keep it alive over there. But before we
Sure.
talk about Fight Kingdom, let's talk a little bit about you. I know this is like the first time we've ever really like sat down together and chatted. Oh, and I also wanted to thank you for coming out to last season's Jazzy
Oh
Brooklyn
yeah, of
Auto
course.
Qualifier. It seems like
Of
ages
course.
ago.
Right.
I think that was back in like
Oh,
November 2022, I think,
something like that. Yeah.
or December.
Or even further back. Yeah, maybe I can't remember, but yeah, yeah, of course.
You did
Uh,
pretty well. That's a pretty pretty solid Makoto. You had some really hype
oh, thanks.
matches.
Yeah, I didn't get as well as I was just thinking about that too, and we'll get around to the Evo, of course, third strike
Hmm.
at Evo thing. But part of me was like, man, I think that my placing since then have been the first, like for the past maybe 2 years, have been the first time I've been like kind of proud of my work in the game, and to the point where now with this big Evo announcement, I was like, man, I really, really hope they seed based on the last year's third strike. I doubt they will. But I hope, I'm like, fingers crossed that they look at the placings. Guy like 13th or whatever, and I was like, that's, man, 13th, hell yeah, for a guy like me anyway. So I'm just hoping that they look at that when they seed for this year, so that I can, you know, maybe scrape by a little bit further than I would normally. But yeah,
What's the biggest tournament? I mean, we're gonna get through all that history, your history with the
sure.
FGC, but just out of
Yeah.
since you mentioned Evo, um, what's like the biggest bracket you've ever like ran or seeded?
Oh, geez. I mean, as far as actually like running a bracket, my experience would be pretty much like weeklies and locals and stuff. And then when I worked Northwest Majors back in the day, I was really big into mystery. I mean, I still love mystery tournaments and Kuso and all that kind of thing. But uh, at the time, I was running the High Rollers Mystery Tournament, which became a little bit of a signature thing for Northwest Majors. And um, that was kind of the biggest deal that I have to run. But it wasn't so much in numbers because it was $50 entry fee, which we considered to be high rollers because it was mystery. Normally high rollers is like 100 or more, but we're like, well, no one's gonna enter a mystery tournament for $100, so we'll do 50 and call that, you know. Uh, but man, we'd still pull like 30 people, and so the pressure there wasn't about running a large bracket. The pressure there was running a bracket that had a really high potential for people getting really upset with how it was run. Emulators failing. We'd have all sorts of weird hardware for different games. We'd bring in a CRT and a GameCube for WarioWare or something. And so there's just a lot of times we would do probably our most famous thing that we had at the mystery tournament for Northwest Majors was um, uh, Nidhogg was something that we kind of connected the FGC with. It was in development at the time, but I managed to reach out to the developer because I'm also kind of in the indie game developer scene a little bit too. So I reached out to the developer of that because I'd seen it. And I was like, this would be perfect for a tournament. Fighting game people need to know about this. We had it for our grand finals, but the thing was super janky. It didn't work right. Lord BBH was in the finals, and then he was like watching the VOD because he got second place and was salty about it and was like, the game isn't running at the right speed and what was going on with our setup there. So, I mean, it wouldn't be the biggest as far as just numbers, but just there was a lot of mitigation to be had to make sure that it still felt fair because people were putting a lot of money up, and we also part of the High Roller Mystery Tournament gimmick was it was winner take all. First place, second place gets $0. So there was just a lot of opportunity for bad customer service experiences. So so that was probably the biggest, you know, as far as having to run a single event somewhere. Beyond that, I mean, Fight Kingdom has trounced that as far as just general stress and the amount of hours I actually have to put in. But it's not so much just running the bracket; it's putting the whole damn thing together and you know designing the trophies and 3D printing them myself. And I'm at a hotel the day before I have to give them out. Finishing them and painting them and mounting them and everything, and just so that's probably you know that's my history as far as running events, I guess, is big ones with something at stake.
Yeah, and again, we're gonna talk more about Fight Kingdom later on in the
Or
show, but let's talk a little bit more about you. Like, what is kind of your history with the FGC, and how did you just kind of get into fighting games in general?
well, I'm old, so I mean, I was there for when fighting games were mainstream, right? Like I always say, like you can tell when like what genre of video game is mainstream when you look at TV shows that have like a fake video game on the TV, and what is that game, right? Like for a while, maybe even still, it was like now when you see someone playing a video game, they're playing a first person shooter and they have a headset on, like a fake video game, or like someone in an ad who's supposed to be playing a video game and they've got an Xbox controller, and this is what like the standard gamer looks like. But you go back to early mid 90s and you see any video game on TV on The Simpsons or whatever they're trying to show, and it's always a fighting game. It's just so visually obvious of like what needs to be done there. But anyway, so that was the big mainstream era, and I was a kid at the time and like middle school maybe, and I love Street Fighter. Uh, I was made to spend most of my weekends at a campground.
Mm,
This campground is called Ross Hill. My parents were just like hillbillies, right? And I grew up in the Northeast, in Rhode Island mostly. And my parents were seasonals at this campground, and so we had like a trailer there. And on the weekends, my parents would drag me out, and we'd have to spend the weekends camping. And I'm just like a huge nerd, and I just want to do computer stuff and video games and all that. So my respite was the game room. They had a game room at this campground, and that's where I went there. And they had Street Fighter 2, and they had it was CE. They eventually got like Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3, and so like I would play. There wasn't really a scene, uh, you know, uh, but fighting games were a big part of uh, my growing up and my getting into art, becoming an artist. Most of my earliest like getting into drawing and painting and stuff was inspired by mostly Capcom fighting games, and just diving into that whole world in the mid 90s. Um, but yeah, the scene was basically whoever I could convince to play a game with me for 10 minutes, and then they'd get bored before I would, of course. But
mhm.
uh, I'm a little lucky, and I wonder how many people in the FGC really like that's. I imagine that's at least for people who are closer to our age, that's probably how most people got into fighting games when they were at their biggest, right? Was
Yeah.
playing probably by themselves against a computer at home because there weren't a lot of, uh, you can play online, and there weren't a lot of options for getting together and a lot of ways to put together organized events or whatever. So
You make a really great point because as someone who isn't really and I think I'd like to get into this more later on, but
sure.
uh, the FGC is so diverse. There's so many different types of people from different backgrounds.
Right.
Um, part of the motivation for Jazzy, uh, and I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this, is that there are a lot of people in the FGC, clearly a minority, who don't who don't consider themselves gamers in the general sense, but
Right.
they really
Yeah.
love like a one game or one or two
Yeah.
games.
Sure.
And I always wondered to myself, are they part of the FGC? Um,
Sure. Yeah.
are
Well,
they,
I mean,
are they
even the term
considered?
is so
Yeah,
young.
yeah.
Term is so young. Even the concept is so young. I mean,
Hmm.
we had it only even just organized events going back however long. Again, that really started to flare up. Evo started to flare up. During a time where at least as far as Capcom fighters went, it was considered the dark ages of fighting games or whatever.
Hmm.
So it's interesting to put that in that context of historically, where you're like, well, I mean, who's part of the FGC if they grew up loving? Perfect example. I think anybody in the chat probably knows this. I'm sure you have seen this. Um, Fighters Generation, the website.
Yeah.
That thing has been around since I was in high school, right? And it's like some guy who doesn't cover tournaments and doesn't seem to cover community stuff, but obviously loves fighting games to an insane degree.
Yeah.
Uh, and completely independent of the community aspect, at least for a while. I'm sure maybe he does stuff now. I don't know, but I do know that it was just it wasn't a meeting place. It wasn't like SRK, but there's a lot of people like that and love like that. I remember when Darkstalkers came out, it was like there was more fan art for Darkstalkers than there were people who played Darkstalkers. I think that might still be true today. It just people love the look of these characters. They love the art from that game. They don't necessarily play it though,
Yeah.
and that's kind of cool too. And you know, yeah, bring them in, get them in the band. They're in put them in the FGC. Let's do
Yeah.
it. Who cares?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because you're from that, like you like you said, you grew up as an artist, you have a background in audio visual media, and all
right,
that stuff. You're you have an interest in the indie gaming and the gaming scene in general. And so like what you said earlier about how when fighting games were mainstream, because just
right,
yesterday, someone won $1 million playing Street Fighter.
yeah,
Um,
sure,
but it's crazy to think like you're right. Like fighting games were never more popular really than when you and I were growing up.
right. And it's a little bit apples to oranges because even video games at that time, I believe it was during the PS2 era. It was like 2001, where statistically, in North America at least, the average home did not have a game console until 2001. That's when it hit that point where it hit 50% or more. So even gaming in general was, a little more niche back then. So it's tough to say. It's again a little apples and oranges, but I mean, everyone played Street
Yeah.
Fighter, and in retrospect, and you're looking at Street Fighter 2, you're like, okay, this game was played by millions of people. It broke some records. It was massively lucrative and everything, and the majority of the player base probably didn't know how to like throw a fireball. You know what I mean? Like most people like didn't really play the game the way we think of playing the game now. Because it had that mainstream appeal, and you were like, okay, these guys who were like reminiscing about, oh, I used to beat my brother on the Super Nintendo when I was a kid, and therefore I love Street Fighter, right? Like these guys, you put Street Fighter in front of them now, even that same game, Street Fighter 2, and they're like, you know, even like an intermediate ST player would make the game look like a completely different game to them.
Yeah.
So, it's a little apples and oranges, but I think that there was a huge cultural impact as far as how much a video game could have cultural impact back then with things like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter that we haven't quite replicated. I mean, we've had some boom periods, of course, but uh, you know, it was I want to say it. I dare to say it was mainstream in like '93 to '95, maybe. Um, so
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit more about, coming up in the Northeast. You obviously live in the Northwest now,
right.
but what was the what were fighting games like in the Northeast at the time? Like, did you have arcades like in the conventional sense, or
Yeah, yeah,
what
and they
where were
were
the
like the
places?
dirty grease. They were the grimy arcades with an
Uh-huh.
operator who didn't like you. They were the real deal. That was the real stuff, and it was not,
Yeah.
we tend to glorify them a little bit, but I grew up in a town called Westerly, which is a beach town, so they had a lot of like boardwalk game rooms and arcades and stuff too.
Okay. Mhm.
So there was a lot of places to just be around, the amusements in general. So, I got kind of fascinated with that very young because of that. As far as like, by the time we hit maybe early 2000s and I'm in high school, like I was on SRK in the forums and I was kind of lurking, and I've always been more of a lurker anyway, as far as that kind of like, online communities go. And, I think I was aware that there were organized tournaments and things. I remember seeing Justin Wong's name in like tournament results on the front page of SRK in high school. Um, but beyond that, like I don't think I even had reliable transportation. So actually, like going to an event or even being aware of events, like I couldn't remember. I don't know that they were even existed anywhere near me. Maybe in Providence there was something, I'm sure, but again, I was just kind of a kid playing with my friends, and whoever could be convinced to, let me beat them up for a little bit. But to me, fighting games grabbed me because I thought there was this more so than anything else, it was like, this is the coolest kind of game to be good at. I didn't know how to. I again, like at the time, the way I was playing these games was like wrong. It didn't any the way we look at competitive fighting games and how a match plays out now looked nothing like what my games looked like. But I was like, when you see these big combos, especially when the Versus series came out, which I loved, um, I was like, it just looks so cool. It feels like it's this arcane secret knowledge that nobody knows. But when you do know it, man, that's got to be the coolest, right? You're like, I just did some crazy, and the animations were gorgeous. The characters were huge compared to most games. The sprites, Um, so there was just nothing as far as like a game to be good at. Nothing felt like it was cooler, on that's like that very core of my brain, you know, instinct level, what do I like about fighting games thing? And that hit me really early on, where I was like, nothing feels better than like knowing what I'm doing in this game. So, and at the time I didn't know. So I was like, I bet if I figured it out, it'd be cool. So I go on Game Facts and try to learn some combos or whatever. And then I'd actually pull one off, and my friends would be like, this sucks, this is stupid, let's play something else. And then I just feel good about myself for 5 seconds. But that was a big draw for me at the time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I went to college, started college and moved to Chicago for a year, and then came out to Seattle like 2004. And that's when I started actually meeting people at GameWorks and in the scene, and becoming aware of, organized events and socializing and playing other people who knew how to do a 720 or something, like it was really uh, a big thing for me, to the point where even today, like I want to say maybe I have two or three friends of mine who I talk to regularly who aren't from like the Northwest fighting game scene. Everyone else is someone I met through Street Fighter um, in Seattle area. So it's been kind of a big deal for me, and it feels nice to maybe give back a little bit, I guess.
How was that move for you, going from uh, the Northeast to the Northwest? You're just outside of fighting games, but also with fighting
Yeah,
games too.
sure. No, I mean, I was so young, and it was kind of a turbulent time in my life. My mom got sick and died from cancer when I was in senior year of high school. And so I was like trying to figure out how to go to college and be an adult and figure out how to live on my own and like really on my own. So it was like now I'm in a new city. I don't know what I'm looking for. I was just kind of like a lost kid, 17 years old, 18 years old. So I mean, it's when I look back now, I'm like, wow, I'm really proud of myself. That's crazy. I can't believe the amount of just being dead broke and like, you know, I couldn't afford the bus, and so I would walk for hours to get someplace, just to buy groceries and then hit the arcade and then, you know, whatever. So like, I don't know. It was it was all it feels just like a blur. At the time it didn't feel that bad, but now I look back on it and I'm like, wow, I'm actually pretty proud. It was, a really turbulent time when I managed to pull things off and finish school and, get a job in video games and all that other stuff. Uh so yeah, it was kind of a wild time, but it was, it was fun to be young and be showing up to play Third Strike after work at the arcade every day and meet people.
Yeah.
So
That was the cool thing about the popularity of Street Fighter, and how and the cool thing about Street Fighter spreading, basically, its influence everywhere. Uh, when I moved out to New York from California, uh, I didn't know anything about New York, except the
sure.
things that I saw in the movie. Like my 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 perception of New York came from like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Spider-Man, and
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
um,
Your visions of New York were
yeah,
mostly Toronto,
yeah,
but you didn't know it yet. Yeah. It
and
was
and
mostly
and
just shots of Vancouver that you didn't know were
yeah,
actually, yeah,
yeah,
sure.
yeah. You're right. It was shot, and yeah. And so
Yep.
who did I turn to? I turned to people in the FGC, people that I met through fighting games, to help me acclimate to these new surroundings. And so, like, did you have a similar experience as far as fighting games, like as far as like you were saying, you made the move there. Like, how did fighting games, sort of help you at all with kind of like what you were talking about, those early years when you were starting out in a new
Absolutely.
place?
I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anybody. Um, I moved away from Rhode Island, where I'm originally from, where, I knew everyone there, but they were all, none of them wanted to leave home. They were kind of townies, and so they're still there today. And and I left for whatever reason. I felt like, well, that's what you do, right? You go out and you see the world because you graduated high school and let's do it. So I mean, I really didn't know anybody, and I'd anchor myself to whatever girlfriend I had at the time, really, and then just hope to try and meet people uh, at school or whatever. And a lot of that didn't work out. I got a degree in media arts and animation. Actually, I had a couple finals that were about that I did based on Third Strike.
Nice.
Um, yeah, where I had recreated a bunch of Makoto and Dudley stuff, and then wrote a big paper on on the animation in the game and the art in the game in general, because I still think it's tied with a couple of Metal Slugs. Still one of the most beautiful 2D games.
Well,
Um,
you probably know this then, that today, it is the 25th anniversary of Third Strike this year, and
yep.
today, art schools, design schools, Third Strike is on the curriculum. They talk about Third Strike,
Yeah, yeah,
design
and
wise,
it's
art
been cool
wise.
to see a lot of the documentation coming out of and stories of the development of the game, sketches and stuff like that. There's that I'd seen bits and pieces from. I have a couple of the Capcom art books that'll show, you know, the black and white drawings that they based a lot of the sprite work on and stuff like that. But I think more of that's coming out now because of things like that, classes teaching animation classes, bringing up Third Strike, so or Street Fighter 3 in general. Um, but yeah, but it was huge. Started, so there's GameWorks, which was this place in downtown Seattle, still there, and it was opened up by Sega in partnership with DreamWorks. I don't know if anybody who already knows this, but it was this big deal. They had a big launch party in 1996. It still has remnants of its original design of the interior, which I love, and it's super 90s. Um, where it's kind of like an industrial. It looks like where the Foot Clan would hang out, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so it had kind of been past its heyday when I had shown up there, but I'd still go there. And they had a Third Strike machine. It's still there, and the Marvel machine. And I started going there after school or after work, and just seeing the same people over and over again, striking up conversations. Eventually, I was invited to sessions at uh, Preppy's house. I don't know if anybody in Third Strike knows Preppy as much as the Marvel guys might, but he's this kind of legendary character who had been archiving match footage prior to, cell phones and capture equipment, prior to YouTube. So he has this massive archive on zacd.com, ZACHD.com, of just insane amounts of like history there and match footage. He's the guy. He's in Dive Kick in the background because he's I think he's probably one of the Kickstarter backers or whatever, but he was the guy who was famous for, he has his camcorder set up and he would set it up behind the TV and he'd just record matches, as many as he could. Just random pools matches, top eights for anything he could go to. He's been around, longer than I have. He's been to, some of the earliest big events doing that kind of thing. And so his house, he would open it up for like monthlies, and have poker tournaments and just people playing Marvel mostly, and then a little bit of Street Fighter and Virtua Fighter and whatever else. So eventually I was invited out, and just from there started meeting everybody, and then Street Fighter 4 happened, which brought in a bunch of bunch more people, and it just kind of snowballed from there to the point where now my entire social circle is those people. So, and a lot of them will be Fight Kingdom, either competing or volunteering or both. So
So
yeah.
so when did the TO thing start happening for you?
It was just like this weird innate like I couldn't, it was around, I guess, when like vanilla Street Fighter 4 happened, and suddenly there was this big influx of new people, and trying, and like the thrill of introducing more people into fighting games. So I'd get like my friends who weren't fighting game people but liked video games, and suddenly they had just picked up of their own accord. Oh my god, they bought a fighting game just on their own. Oh my god. Well, if you're going to do that, guys, then you should know about, we got this thing this weekend, come on out, or you know try to teach them how to play a little bit or whatever it was. So um I don't know, I've always just I'd run really small things whenever I could here and there, and just side tournaments at our weeklies in Seattle. Jason Cole lived up here for a while, and he ran these weeklies out of his house that he was renting, um, that were wild during that era, during like that first few years of Street Fighter 4, where I mean, this was 40 plus people every week, something like that, like just someone's house in the woods. Um, and so it was like, yeah, let's run some side brackets just for kicks, and then started doing mystery tournaments at those kinds of events, and those were fun, just like little side things. And I don't know, being around it so much, it was hard for me to look at the way people were doing, you know, Don rankings or tournaments in general, and not think like, "Ah, that's cool. I bet I could. What if we did it this way? What if we did that?" I went to the first Northwest Majors, which was in 2008, um, at University of Washington, and got involved a year or two later. I started doing the trailers for them, organizing, again, my mystery tournament thing there, helping out wherever I could. I streamed some side tournaments from Northwest Majors once or twice. So I don't know. It just always been around and just kind of floating in the back of my head of like, man, I think that if I really dove into this, I could make something cool. So, you know, and then the original idea for Fight Kingdom was not ever meant to, take the place of Northwest Majors or anything like that. It was actually meant to supplement it in a very specific way. So at the time, 2018, 2019, the guy who ran Northwest Majors, he had kind of scaled the event back in a way that I don't know that a lot of people were happy with necessarily. But he was able to run it more lean. He had way fewer games. A lot of side games got cut, and actually he started running it at GameWorks instead of at uh, this community college where he had been the few. So it was a smaller space, and it wasn't as big of a production. So I was like, well, a lot of these side games were the retro things that I really love, and I wanted to kind of pick up those pieces, give those people a place to do that. So it was meant to run kind of across the street from Northwest Majors and supplement the side games that they had been dropping, just so that we'd have a big event that was focused on that kind of thing. Um, and I already knew a lot of people who were doing that because I'd be milling around the side events. I'd do the mystery tournaments. Like that whole scene were the people who I knew enough to be like, hey, let's do a thing that's all the old games. Let's do a thing that's, let's bring our mystery tournament over there, whatever it is. And then 2020 rolled around. We were supposed to do the first Fight Kingdom, and then something happened. I can't remember exactly what it was, but for some reason we didn't. And then Northwest Majors quietly just disappeared. I talked to the guy who ran it. I've known him for years, and he told me that he was done. He gave me all of his CRTs. So actually, if you come to Fight Kingdom and you look at our CRTs that we use for Marvel or whatever, if you look at the top, a lot of them will still have the spray paint property of Northwest Majors written on it. So I was like, well, there's a lot more pieces to pick up than I originally planned, but hell yeah, let's do it. So we've moved a couple of modern games in there too, and just try to be a nice mix so that we can, uh, you know, the hidden secret agenda is trying to get new kids to play some old games. So it's been a lot of that. So we keep it retro focused, but of course, I'm also open to running any game that any scene wants to show up for. Really, I kind of want to just provide a nice big canvas, and anybody who wants to show up and bring their paintbrush, go for it. And some of the scenes really have. Virtua Fighter 5 guys have been turning up like crazy. They really, the numbers for that were really impressive last year, and they've been really motivated. I'm happy to have them as often as they want. The Marvel guys it's been kind of crazy, and I think this whole dynamic of like, okay, this majors went away and now I can try to pick up the pieces a little bit. It's the story of West Coast majors, it seems. A lot of people are talking about this, where it's like, well, there's no majors on the West Coast. There's no majors on the West Coast anymore. So, well, I think everywhere is too expensive now for big events in general. But yeah, so I think it's just been a lot of picking up those, just giving a place for people to come and party. So I don't know what Marvel has as far as big Marvel events, but I feel like we're turning into one a little bit because they would. I mean, they show up. We close down the ballroom. They still just bring all the CRTs down to the bar, and they're down there playing matches and getting rowdy till 4 a.m. at Fight Kingdom. It's awesome, and so this year we decided to make it a main event just to reward them for being again really initiated and really turning up big numbers. So they actually last year our top games as far as biggest brackets were tied. Third Strike and Marvel, the exact same amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
So of course Third Strike will always be number one in my heart, and it'll always be there. And we're gonna have cabs there for the tournament, and but I also did want to have a special shout out for the Marvel guys this year, just for let them know like this is a home for them.
Marvel is so hype.
Yeah, it was
Marvel is
great,
so hype.
and
It's
even
so
the
much fun to
ST guys,
watch.
like
Yeah.
the ST, like the people who come out, they're just so passionate. Like I got to meet so many of these guys I met Frank Punches for the first time at Fight Kingdom last year, and then saw him again at Evo. It was cool. All these guys, it's like I just it just feels like they're all just like lost and they just need a place to go. So I don't know. I'm just trying to provide that, I guess.
You mentioned earlier that part of why you started Fight Kingdom is you hope that uh, younger generations play these older games. Getting the younger generation to play fighting games, period, can be a
Yeah,
challenge.
right. Yes.
Uh, why do you think it's important that younger generations play some of these older games? Because this is a question that I always think about, obviously, because I'm part of Jazzy and we keep
I mean, it's
trying to
the same
keep
with
the
anything.
competitive
I
scene
mean,
of Third Strike alive. But yeah, I just want to get
yeah,
your
of course.
thoughts.
And it's with anything. If you're going to keep anything alive, then it can't be the same old farts from 20 years ago only.
Hmm.
It's like you have to have a reason for it to keep going, or else it's going to die with you, right?
Hmm.
Uh, uh, we're not that old. Metaphorically, die with you. So like you have to, make sure that it's still open. I think also we have kind of a tendency to be really defensive about our history with these games and events and things like that, where we're like, no, you have to do it this way because it's old school and that way because it's the way. It's like you're just turning more people off, and that's your prerogative. But uh, if the goal is to keep the scene alive and keep people interested, then guess what? We need things like Fightcade, so people can play online, and it needs to function, and it needs to, uh, work with these kids' Xbox controllers. You need to. That's So last year I had started developing all of the controller harnesses for all of our cabs, so that all of our cabs that we play our tournament on at Fight Kingdom uh, have the undammed USB compatibility. So anybody who's bringing any kind of controller they want, USB controller, that they can you play with their controller on the cabs because it's what they're practicing with at home, right? It's this accessibility thing that, you know, you if you're trying to have a secret club with you and your friends and you guys like things a certain way, that's fine. But if you're trying to actually grow a scene or even keep it alive, which is, you know, I think we forget how niche fighting games are. Never mind the subgenre of a subgenre that is retro fighting games. But it's an effort to keep these things alive a little bit. It can't just be, you dicking around with your friend in the basement and just, expect to have people to play even online, right? Like I think it's the reason that this thing, Third Strike, I mean, has stayed alive and has been so like wild lately is because of things like Jazzy, things like Fightcade, and events where you have to mix it up. They're not siloed little things. We have it at a big event that has all these other games at it. You have to welcome people in there. We had the Nom make top 8 at Third Strike last year. This kid, if you don't know, he's like what 14 years old or something. He was at Evo too, and he travels with his dad to all these different tournaments. And he uses like a what do you call it? Like a mix box, right? Like with the WASD keys and I don't know. You just have to make room for that kind of thing. So you make it easy for people to show up. There's already a wall when you're trying to learn fighting games or try to get into fighting games. Like, why build that wall, higher?
Yeah,
Like, you need to start. Like, we need to break it down, if anything.
yeah.
So
Shout
there's
outs to you, by the
no,
way, for the USB decoders. I know that you had given us some USB decoders to use at the finale last year, but uh, unfortunately, we were we ran into some issues. But I am happy to
sure.
report that those very same harnesses that you made for Jazzy will be at use at the Brooklyn Games auto qualifier. Shout outs to Cruz, Link, Jose Cruz, the Mod Father. He had been, hard at work trying to get those harnesses ready to go. So, appreciate having a little piece of
Yeah,
Fight Kingdom at the Jazzy Brooklyn Auto Qualifier in May.
yeah. It's such a nice thing to have, but it's a complicated thing to set up, and it takes a
Yeah.
lot of time. And so if it helps any of these TOs, you know, uh, more than happy, of course. And if you at home want to USB mod your arcade cabs, you can go to fightkingdomfgc.com and order your own They look like this,
I like
and
it.
you have to provide your own undammed USB, but
Yeah.
you just pop that in there, and then it just splits your controls to this and pops them through the machine so that the controls on the cab and whatever you plug in are both live at the same time. Um, so it's a kind of simple thing. It just takes a long time, and I'm sure a lot of arcade operators or people who are TOing and stuff don't want to have to deal with that. So I thought it'd be nice to have kind of a come up with a you know kind of a universal solution to that problem. I say universal, but I guess it really just works with the Sega cabs and a few of the others. But anyway, reach out if you want help with that kind of thing because I'm all about it, and especially if you're a TO. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
those aren't easy to make. They're time consuming. They take a while, and so shout outs to everyone in the modding community. That's another kind of niche community that's also part of the FGC. That's sort of contributed to helping the scenes for these older games alive.
right. Yeah, I mean, even just I mean, the guys putting together super guns and
Mhm.
all these things that you kind of take for granted when it comes to just making sure these things operate properly in a tournament setting. So there's just so much to it that it's even as I'm running an event now, I'm running Fight Kingdom, and it's like what I need more than anything are like people who are like tech savvy and know about analog video signals and all this other stuff who can help me set up capture and fix when something goes wrong with an arcade machine. This is I keep
Yeah.
using the term arcane knowledge, but it really is. And so anybody who's capable of that, like in your
Mhm.
local scene, go shake their hand for me because it's critical that you have people like this,
Yeah.
people who are like, and I'm not a CRT repair person, but we have somebody like that in the area, and it's like there's not a lot of options for when you need somebody like this. So it's like when the people are making those services available at all, it's been crucial.
So talk to me a little bit more about like the branding of Fightcade. Like, how did you uh come up with that idea and just the
Sure.
name and the theme? And because like I said
Yeah.
before, it kind of, one of the reasons why I'm like a really big fan of it is because I grew up, and I still am a pro wrestling fan. I like watching some pro wrestling, but when I was a
Yes.
kid I watched it a lot. And so, yeah, talk to me a little bit about the branding and how that came about.
Well, I've worked professionally. Like my day job has been working in consumer marketing for video games. I worked at Nintendo most recently for like 3.5 years, and prior to that, I was at the Pokemon Company, and I've worked at NC Soft and Hasbro and all these places. So I had like a professional history of putting together uh, graphics and commercials and stuff like that. Um, and I was like, this is where I go all in on stuff that just I want to make and what inspires me. And what really inspires me, honestly, was my Game Pro magazine subscription that my mom got me as a kid, and the print ads for video games that would
Oh
show up
wow.
in that era. So
Yeah.
that led me down this path of loving what they called grunge typography, which was pioneered by a guy, I mean, by a few people, but there's a guy named David Carson, who's probably the most famous artist from the 90s. And I always say that grunge, grunge in graphic design is 100 times more influential than grunge music ever was. I feel like grunge music disappeared by 95, but grunge in graphic design, the grunge typography, went for decades. And you still see it here and there. But this is the kind of thing that informed the look of Fight Kingdom, where it was like, I don't want to use a font. I don't want to just pick a font and then type out things. It's like, no, you have to like collage letters together and things are, they look, it's like uh, it feels grassroots, it feels punk rock, it's not on the grid, it's everything is crazy and off kilter. And like even the ads that I grew up with, everything was canted angles in the 90s and fisheye lenses and, destroyed fonts, collage, typewriter kind of style, you know. So a lot of that look was informed by just kind of graphic design in the 90s that I was exposed to as a kid, and it came from a lot of magazine ads. Um, the name Fight Kingdom, I don't think I realized it at the time, but probably you bring up wrestling. Was probably subconsciously I just took Wrestle Kingdom, which is like uh, in Japan. There's a promotion, a wrestling promotion, and their big show of the year is called Wrestle Kingdom. And I think that I subconsciously was just like, yeah, Fight Kingdom sounds cool. I'll just go with it. So, and then yeah, I made the logo in like 2019, and I did the logo first before I did anything, before I had any kind of plans or called venues or talked to anybody else about it. I was like, let's make a logo first that will inform everything going out. So, yeah, that's been that's been a big driving thing for the look of Fight Kingdom, which a lot of people have, been kind enough to tell me that they like. Also, just with my video producer background, it's I've been really proud of the like trailers that we've done, um, which have been a lot of live action stuff, very like trying to make them filmic and cinematic and come up with props, costumes. Like really try to go all out. Like I really like, even as much as I want to make a really great majors, I want to make the best fighting game tournament uh, trailers of all time. It's kind of like a thing that's always in the back of my head. Like, make something that no one's made before. Make something that's weird. Make something that looks like professional quality. So I think a lot of the success of Fight Kingdom has come from that professional quality of the branding that is really just me trying to make this thing look like it's a big professional operation when really it's a handful of guys just so. But I think it's worked. I think it shows, it comes through. It's like, no, we're trying to take this serious, right?
Yeah, those trailers definitely capture that grunge 90s aesthetic that you were talking about earlier. Uh,
Yeah,
Sometimes when I watch your trailers, I immediately think of, like you said, those music videos from the 90s. I remember the first
exactly.
time I saw the
Yeah,
trailer for last year. I don't know why this immediately popped in my head, but do you remember the band Stabbing Westward?
yeah, of course. Yeah,
They had a music video for a song called Shame. Have you ever
yes,
seen
yeah. I know
those?
exactly
I
what
don't
you're
know
talking about. Yep.
why, but when I saw your trailer, I immediately
Yeah,
thought of that music video. That music video is sick. I really love that music video.
yeah, yeah. A lot of inspiration has and continues to be uh, stuff from that time, because I'm like, okay, this is the era we're going for. We're going to have a retro focus, and this was the 90s, and it's a lot of it's just how I remember it. So a lot of it is going to be influenced by KMFDM and Nine Inch Nails and stuff like that. So uh, I'm more than happy to do it. So and it's been great. But the reception, I guess, like the feedback I've gotten on that kind of stuff has been like the most heartwarming part of all of this, to be honest, because it's something that I've had to do for other people, for other companies, just to like pay the bills and stuff, for other people's projects and things for so long. And to finally sit down and be like, I get to make a video and it's whatever I want. It's been so freeing creatively. And I don't have to pass it by the editing team. I don't have to pass it by the writers, the lawyers, all these people who need approvals on every stupid little video you make it work. You know, I don't have to do any of that. I just like make it until I like it, and then just put it on the internet. And uh, yeah, I'm glad people like it.
Let's talk a little bit more about Fight Kingdom this year. So Fight Kingdom this year is scheduled for May 3rd through 5th, Everett, Washington.
Yep.
Uh, and this is the website for Fight Kingdom. And so it's fightkingdomfgc.com. Uh, and
We've got a
so,
hotel venue. It's actually we've had this. It's the same venue we've had for 2 years now, and we've actually kind of reaching the limits of uh, this venue, where I think this is going to be our last year here because we need to expand. the registration numbers have just been, you know, growing faster than I could
Yeah.
have anticipated. So
I just love this like
there's
grindhouse kind of theme going. It's so
so
sick.
so this was we started doing a second event throughout the year. One and we're gonna want to do again in October. That's a 1 day thing called Night of the O9er.
Yeah.
And we do this because there's a lot of games that we'd like to have at Fight Kingdom that we just can't. There I am. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of the event where we pick it up. So we have like Xrd there, we have Uni, we do Street Fighter 4 there. Um, so and at the time it's like Halloween, and so I'm watching a lot of some of my favorite like horror movies and things like that. And I love Italian giallo, they call it giallo movies.
Hmm.
Um, and so that informed the look of almost everything I've done for Night of the O9er.
Hmm.
And that was also the look I carried into that trailer there, which was the announcement for this year's Fight Kingdom, where I was like, I want it to look like a Italian horror movie from the 70s. And so that was that was the look there.
And so at Fight Kingdom, we have a wide range of old and new school games running at the event. And so the featured events are going to be ST, which, by the way, happy birthday, ST,
Happy
celebrating
birthday, ST.
30 years. Guilty Gear, Strive,
Yes.
Third Strike, Tekken 8, 6, and MVC 2. And then we have the community events, which include CVS 2, UMC 3, Mark of Wolves, Virtua Fighter 5. I had shouted out Cruz Link earlier, Jose Cruz. He's
Yep.
one of the the community leaders of the VF scene out in New York. Accent Core, and then Grand Blue. You were talking about the hotel venue or the venue. Can you tell us a little bit more about the venue for people who weren't at Fightcade last year and are thinking of going this year?
Sure. So we have a hotel venue, which I don't think any majors in I know for a fact that no majors in Washington State history has ever had the hotel venue. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud of that. It's something that we've kind of I've tried to drag into the modern era, right? So yeah, it's a Marriott in downtown Everett, which is like maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes north of Seattle. So if you're coming in through SeaTac, it's a little bit of a hike, but Everett also does have its own airport called Payne Field, which I'm encouraging people who are coming up from California and the few places that this airport does service via Alaska Airlines to look into flying into Payne Field in Everett, because that's like a 10-minute Uber to the venue. Um, so it's also right in the heart of downtown on the street called Colby Avenue, which is where all the best restaurants are. And so there's like tons of places to eat within, I mean, you're talking like 2 blocks. Within 2 blocks, you've got pizza and pho, you've got barbecue, you got Mexican bars, there's Korean hot pot, all this stuff, you name it, like lots of food options in walking distance. But if you don't want to do that, we also have a restaurant lounge area on the first floor where people can hang out 24/7 for playing matches and stuff. We can have setups down there, and it's got everything you'd need if you don't even want to leave the venue for the whole weekend. So um, that's the ballroom there. The picture picture of the ballroom. That's Yeah, that was from last year. So it's nice. They've given us just, I mean, we get to run the whole place. The venue has been fantastic. They love us. Uh, so I mean, we get to set up anywhere we want. We can stay at we can, there's they've like year one, they were like, we need you guys to be quiet past 10 p.m. But after year one, like they've been like, yeah, just do whatever you want, go nuts all night long, whatever you need, because they're just so happy that we're there at all, because people have just really been turning up and spending money at the bar and booking rooms. So So they're happy just to have us. They're not a place that gets a lot of big events like this. So, you know, uh, they really let us kind of go nuts with it. So we have stage in there. Um, yeah, we're oh also I don't know if you've seen this, but we did, and we're doing it again. An audience participation game show at Fight Kingdom. Do you know about this? Did you see this at all?
Yes, the fight is right.
The fight is right. So I'm really proud of this, and this is an example of before when we were off air. I was talking about how you get a lot of ideas for your events, but because you need time and money to pull them off, you can only do so many. But this is one of my like weird things that I think is unique to our event. You can't really do it anywhere else, and you basically play the prices right. And it's free. It's just like we call you down from the audience, like it's Price is Right. Come on down, and instead of bidding on how much you think a blender costs, we'll show you a random combo from a random fighting game with the health bars obscured, and you bid on how much damage you think the combo did, and then whoever's right gets come on stage, and then we get two people on stage, and once we have two people on stage, they spin a big wheel, and they play a random mystery game off the big wheel. And if they win that, then they get to play what I've called Priority Linko, which is a 6 foot tall Plinko board that we've made where you drop the chips down and you win cash. And it's free to enter and it's super fun. And it's I want to do more like game show stuff too, because it's really fun for, you know, I like when events have something for people to do besides the bracket. You know what I mean? Like something for you to do once you've gone 0 and 2, you're done playing. You're like, I guess I could play casuals, but also, so we have vendors, artists, stuff like that. And so, we're gonna have the fight is right again. And we've also talked about putting together for next year, in addition to the fight is right, a family feud style thing. So, that's another kind of just a good reason to come out, especially on like Friday night, where sometimes these 3-day events, people don't want they want to be there for Saturday, Sunday. They don't want to deal with having to be there longer than they need to be sometimes. So I try to give people some fun stuff to do on Fridays before Saturday pools day.
You were mentioning earlier about the trophies, and
Mhm.
you have to put photos of those trophies on the website or on the Start GG page. I know that you dropped them, I think, last week.
Yeah, yeah. I put some. I
Probably,
have some.
probably the best trophies I have ever seen. I like
Thank
kudos
you.
to you. That's like
So those are again
ridiculous.
designed. I designed them myself. I 3D print them myself. I have some failed prints right here
Uh-huh.
for if anybody who hasn't seen it. But it is an Astro. It will be golden by the time you win it, and so we are pretty proud of our trophies, and we're gonna have 6 of them for one for the champion of each of our main games.
Mhm.
Justin Wong showed up last year and got to take 2 of them home. Yeah, if you go to the Fight Kingdom FGC on Twitter, you'll see there's a very recent post that shows a full 3D turnaround of the finished thing. But um, yeah, you're right. I should probably put that on the website too,
Yeah.
or on Start GG. Yeah, I forget how good that is. And then we have custom medals too. I don't have one handy to show you, but again, that's another thing where I feel like it's important. That's not where you spare no expense, right? Like you want
Yeah.
the trophies and the medals to feel like something people really like. They're gonna take it home and they're not gonna shove it in a drawer somewhere. They want to hang it on the wall. So we have a lot of stuff like that too. I see. So we have a Fight Kingdom merch. In general, I try to keep it unique. Again, like everything else, just try to give people a reason why it's not just another regionals that you can skip if you feel like it. Like we got some stuff going on that only we have.
Yeah.
The ski masks have been a big hit too.
Yeah, that's something that I had to kind of, it's just kind of personally, I'm not really much of like a materialistic person, but
Uh-huh.
you know, it's something I really had to kind of learn as far as like people really value having these keepsakes. People really
Yeah,
value having these things that they can take home to remind them of the great time they had at these events. I
Right.
think you're really knocking it out of the park in that aspect.
Thank you.
Um, so let's kind of end the stream talking a little bit about just the future of Third Strike in general. This is, of course, a Third Strike kind of focused show with Jazzy Talk, and so Third Strike is one of the featured games at Fight Kingdom, and for the first time ever, it's going to be a Jazzy ranking event. I know that we tried
Yeah,
to.
right.
I know that you
I
reached
feel
out
we've been
last
trying.
season, yeah, but timing
It
never
was
really.
last season we were outside of the normal like dates for Jazzy, and then the first 2020 version that got canceled of Fight Kingdom, we did get approved to be a Jazzy rank thing, and so this is our. It just hasn't happened for years now, and we're finally get to be a ranking event, and we're going to be super late in the season, which I love too.
Yeah.
Um, so it's exciting, and I really hope people turn up for Third Strike because it's been insane. It's been our biggest game every year. You know, we do East West battles. We just have a good time. You know, Mustardback is running. He's our game lead for Third Strike this year, which I'm really happy to have. Uh, and man, I don't know, Third Strike's always sick. So and the fact that it's just I'm so happy that of all these older games that has just for some reason been growing in North America for whatever reason. Uh, I'm just so happy that to see to see the love it's gotten on Fightcade even before the Evo announcement and all that stuff. Just that the numbers have always stayed pretty good, and you know, it'll always be my favorite game, and it'll always have love at Fight Kingdom. So yeah, I really hope people turn out for it. I really hope people take the ranking events seriously and want to get those points on the board because man, I want to get points on the board for me too. You
Well,
know.
the race to qualify through ranking events is really heating up. There was a
Yeah.
lot of movement in the leaderboard just after the last couple weeks, and like you were saying, because Fight Kingdom is in May, it's going to be one of the last opportunities for players to be able to earn points.
Right.
And so like you said, it's going to be really exciting to see how all that shakes out. You had mentioned Justin. I said this a lot of times in different shows and different podcasts. But when we did season one, Justin uh, went out of his way to compete in Jazzy, and just
Right.
having him at the finale and being willing to compete at the first finale, it meant a lot as far as you know helping get Jazzy on the map. And so, like you said, I really hope people come out to find Kingdom,
Yeah.
especially people who are looking to qualify because top five players on the ranking board uh, get a spot in the finale. And
Right.
if, like you said, everything holds course, Third Strike is shaping up to be to have another big turnout at Fight Kingdom, and so it'll probably be worth a ton of points.
And I
Uh,
hope another shout outs personally to Justin for Fight Kingdom too. He's been a big supporter of the event from its very inception to the point where um he's let us use his Twitch channel for the main stage every year, and that will be the same this year too. But he's just another guy who, there's a lot of influence there, and he uses it to bring attention to the smaller communities and these smaller games that, he doesn't have to do that, but he does, and I think that's super cool. So
yeah. So speaking of that, just wanted to get your thoughts. I know we had already mentioned that Third Strike is going to be at Evo this year. It was just announced, last month. And so, yeah, just kind of what are your thoughts in general about Third Strike making a return as a main game at Evo?
I think that third strike competition now is like crazy. Like it's in a place I never thought it would be. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an expert. I'm not like a top player, but I feel like the game had felt in 2008, 2009, the game felt solved, especially after that 2008 Evo finals, where it just all the Chun mirrors and everything. And I think it really died down. And then in the view of the wider fighting game space, right? And then 2011 we had online edition come out, and suddenly you were seeing a lot of people picking up the game for the first time and doing weird stuff. I remember feeling like I hadn't played against a Ryu in Third Strike in years, and then online edition came out, and then suddenly I was like, oh yeah, I forgot this character's in this game. It's just, I don't know. People have been developing stuff still. I couldn't have been more wrong in that time, 08, 09, about the game being solved, because I can't believe like how the competition has exploded. The tech people continue to still find, uh, and I'm super psyched that North America is getting so into it, and I can't even begin to guess what top eight's going to look like at Evo as far as who's actually going to be there. I don't know who's traveling for it. Of course, Japan. I've been blessed enough to visit Japan and play Third Strike over there, and it's it's a way of life to some of those guys for sure. But I'm just so psyched for it, and I think that it's going to be a wake up call in both directions. By that I mean, I think we're going to see that a lot of people who never really cared about Third Strike are going to take it really seriously this year. And the people who have been playing it for a long time are going to be like, oh my God, like some of these like younger guys can really figure, they're better than I thought they were going to be. And then the other way around, I think I think we're going to see a lot of these older guys who have been playing consistently for 20 years just have the time of their life destroying everyone. So I think I'm just really psyched for it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and to see it on the main stage. I mean, I hope it's actually. I don't know what the plans are, if they're doing top sixes again or top eights or whatever, but like I really hope it is like the main stage, like right up there with Tekken 8, Street Fighter 6 finals and all that stuff too. So because that would be amazing to see just that scale. Now that Evo is filling arenas and stuff, right? Like that's still trippy to me. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that question of Third Strike, like you said, you thought that in 2008 the game was quote unquote solved, and
right.
yeah, it's been a while since I've heard that phrase. As I was alluding to earlier, there's a a large, a small but vocal contingent of players in the fighting game community who just stick to one game, whether that
Yeah,
game be ST or Third Strike or Marvel, and kind of going back to the question of why we should keep running these games. I think part of the answer is there, that these games, when we when people like you and other TOs make a concerted effort to try to keep these games alive, it gives the people who love these games and who love playing these games the opportunity to, like you said, develop different strategies, evolve the meta, uh,
right.
and when we I know there's a lot of talk on social media about how, there's kind of this fear that, at Evo this summer it's going to be just all chuns.
No, I don't think
Um
it is. I really don't think it is.
and
Can we? I'm psyched. I just want to talk Third Strike for a sec.
yeah, yeah.
Not even offense, but here's the thing: for as good as Chun is, she's not that popular. Isn't that interesting?
Mhm.
I think that's fascinating. The top tiers in this game, I think, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like
I,
I know Makoto's really good,
mhm.
but she never wins tournaments.
Yeah, yeah, I
You know,
think, in terms of like the question of like, is a game solved or not, I think so much has to do with the parameters of the competition.
sure, yeah,
So playing, say, for example, in a Japanese style tournament, and this is why I'm so fascinated and curious about what's going to happen at Evo Japan.
right,
Because for the first time ever, well, not for the first time ever, I know that Third Strike ran as a side tournament in at Evo Japan before, and that was run in with American rules. But for the most part, especially in singles tournaments in Japan, it's a single game. There's a lot of team format, and so that was a way for tournaments to have a little bit more variety as far as character representation, because when I think
yeah,
about a game being solved, it doesn't make sense to me to even like use that to describe something like Third Strike, primarily because of the game mechanics. And of course, I'm
Yeah,
talking about the parry. We
the
can
parry.
never overestimate, to me, how important the parry mechanic is, because
It has defined the game. Mechanically, it
it,
defines the game absolutely. It is why it is the best game. It is why it is the worst game.
yeah,
it,
but it's
yeah,
also the
it
reason
lives and
why.
dies with fair.
Yeah, but it's also the
Yeah,
reason why you can never say that the game is solved. And
right.
so, a
Exactly.
lot of it really has to do with the rules of the tournament.
Mhm.
Even in something like 2 out of 3, best of 5, or whatever, if we're talking like first to fives, first to tens, then maybe you're going to start to see a little less character variety, because, the game is still a video game. There are still characters that have better tools than other characters.
Yep.
But the parry is always the corrective. It's always kind of like the self-balancing mechanic. It always
Yeah.
gives
Yes,
that
it is.
hope
The
for
great
the players.
equalizer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Like,
think it's funny. I think when I see now with Street Fighter Six being so big, and I actually do like Street Fighter Six. I'm someone who did not like Street Fighter Five. I barely played it. I played a lot of Street Fighter Four, but only because they made me, you know. But like, I was never crazy about this. Street Fighter Six is the first Street Fighter I've liked since Third Strike. I like
mm,
actually really like, and to see the people's response to perfect parries is really interesting coming from Third Strike. And I would love
yeah.
to know what other Third Strike players think about this, because so many people are like, you need to nerf this. This function is completely broken. Nerf perfect parries; they're ruining the game. And to a Third Strike player, it's already it's already worse than a real parry, you know.
Mm.
So we're like, I don't see what the big deal is. You got your damage scaled down to nothing when you actually land one, and you're not really stealing turns
There's no high low
with it
though. I
as
think that's
easily.
the thing for me.
Yeah,
Like, personally, for me, the thing is that there's no high low parry. It's just one
sure.
parry, and I think that's
Right.
something that's a big difference between Third Strike and Six. But yeah, like, I think that reaction, especially from newer generation of players, like, it's that's the ethos that Capcom, for better or worse, had spent the last 10 years cultivating,
Cultivating.
right? This idea
Yeah.
that they expect, like, players then begin to expect certain things from fighting games. That's
Right.
why, like, Third Strike players like you and me maybe have a slightly different response to the mechanics in Six, because
Right.
we've been dealing with, like, how many times have you complained, oh, you fucking guesser, oh, Laker
Right.
Perry, oh,
Yep.
you pressed down there,
I
oh,
think because I play with Mustard all the time now, and he plays Dudley, and I've always said, I'm like, the scariest move in this game is Dudley's empty jump.
yeah,
Like, that's the
yeah,
most terrifying
yeah,
attack in
yeah,
this game is empty jump, because it's just like there's such a, I mean, it really,
yeah.
you're like, what do I do? Like, do you really go Yomi level 7 and just anti-air him like a maniac?
But that's what
It's like,
keeps the
no,
game alive, right? That's why
exactly. It's
that's
great.
what keeps the
It's
game from
fantastic.
being
Yeah.
completely solved. That's what makes
Right.
it hype. And players like you and me who have stuck with the game, we've developed a different meta based around the threat of the parry. Like, I always remember when Ultra David commentates Third Strike, he always points out how one of the most unique things about Third Strike is that it's a game that has footsies without pressing buttons.
Yes. Sure. Yeah.
And
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
and that's kind of how we've kind of learned how to play the game, and
Right.
and develop our strategies, for matchups around the threat of the parry. And
Mhm.
I think maybe that's why players like you and me have a very different reaction, like when I see a mechanic like perfect parry. Like, to me, it's like, okay, you know that's something that we had been dealing with for years,
Yeah.
in
And I'm
Third
like,
Strike.
it's already a stance.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
how much worse? How much worse can a parry get? Like, when I hear it's like, to me, I'm like, the moment I found out it was a stance thing, and instead of, and the fact the damage scaling on it, like, those two things alone for me was just like, oh, this isn't really a parry. You
Hmm.
know.
Yeah.
So
And then in, like, my other podcast, the Mutant Experience podcast, one of the more recent ones I sat down with Saber AZ, long time Street Fighter player, living out in Arizona,
yep.
and you know he's more old school than I am, and he still, thinks, he has a very different perception of the parry because unlike him, I started my competitive my career with the third, just third strike. I've only competed in third strike, but
Right.
someone like Saber, he's played all different types of fighting games, and so he has a very different look on the parry too.
Right.
And then we get all this discussion about whether Street Fighter, like Third Strike, is an actual Street Fighter game, because
Drives
of
me
the
crazy.
parry. And
In a world where Alpha 3 exists, that drives me nuts. This
yeah.
game has air blocking in Street Fighter, and you want to talk? You want to start in on Third Strike? Get out of here.
Since Mustard Back is in the chat, I guess we'll delve into maybe a little bit more of controversial ground. There's also been a lot of talk about the how Third Strike is going to be run at
Oh
Evo.
no, Mustard,
Um,
you've done it. This is your legacy now. After all
yeah.
your hard work, this is going to be your legacy. Oh no.
um, I just want to kind of quickly talk a little bit about that. Uh, Again, as someone who started playing Third Strike competitively before Evo Moment 37, before Evo 2004. And I mentioned this during the last Jazzy Talk when news dropped that Third Strike was going to be at Evo. Um, and, the website listed arcade, and now there's talk that it might be on Supergun. Um, Now, look, number one, Evo. It's a big ass tournament, okay?
Yep.
And
Yep.
there are logistics, there are costs, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of information we don't know. Just for me personally, um, and again, this is not to try and get people not to go to Evo or whatever, but just as someone who has been playing the game competitively for so long, facts are facts. 2000 Evo, Third Strike at Evo has only been run on arcade cab only once in the history of Evolution. And that was
Right.
in 2003 on American cabs. And then
Mhm.
the year after, 2004, it was run on Supergun. And then the year after that, from 2005 until its last appearance in 2009, it was run on PS2.
Right.
So Third
I
Strike
forgot.
is, yeah,
2009 had the teams thing. I forgot
yes,
about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, as far as Evo history goes, Third Strike has only been run on arcade hardware twice in its entire
Yeah. So
history.
I
Um,
think a lot of it is kind of a lot of the controversy is around. I don't know. To me, when I see arcade, I just assume Supergun.
mhm,
Because it's the same. It is our arcade hardware.
yeah,
When people are thinking of the arcade cabs,
mhm,
that's the plastic and metal casing around your monitor,
yeah,
and it doesn't really.
yeah,
That's not to me. I don't even think of that as like a platform
mhm,
necessarily,
mhm,
right? I think they're awesome. I have a bunch right over here, you know, um, and s- uh, and so I can think is I think that we have a lot of people who are putting the again. Third Strike was at Evo last year.
yeah,
It's been at all these majors. I don't know who's providing these setups, but they've been the same ones at Combo Breaker and Evo,
mhm,
where they have the super gun and the power supply mounted at the top. They've got the undammed decoders mounted on the sides, and it's just an arcade monitor surrounded in plywood with handles bolted so they can
mhm,
carry them easily. And sometimes they are uh I don't know, some of the monitors look kind of washed out. They look like old monitors and the picture's not great or the colors are weird or whatever.
mhm,
But beyond that, I mean, they're great. They've been fine. I
yeah,
really haven't. I really have no issue with that kind of thing. I think that if you can, and again, Fight Kingdom will have arcade cabs, but that's only because we, again, we want to provide something that's unique and fun and cool, but we also don't want to lose the advantages of um, from a player's perspective, the advantages of something like Supergun or even console
mhm,
in some cases.
yeah,
I would never, again, but as far as being able to use your controller that you practice on at home, So we have our cabs outfitted with that so that they can do that.
Yeah.
I think it's a completely. I think nowadays, again, if you want to be old school and say you play what the arcade has, that's cool too. It's your prerogative. But if you have, if you're concerned with a player experience, I think that there's nothing wrong with sitting down at a tournament and they have arcade cabs and you have to use their controls and you're like, this is different from everything from every match I played for the past year. Whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
know.
I'm of the
I think it's a legitimate concern where you're like, if they wanted to play on cabs, and you have to use the controller of the cab they just happen to assign you, that's fine. Just make sure that the expectation is put out there clearly, and that's what your event is.
Mhm.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It's not what we're doing. It's not what Evo's doing.
Mhm.
Super guns are great, and I think a lot of this has actually come from a lot of people don't know what a super gun is. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people now are like hearing the term for the first time, and they think that it's like a replacement for the arcade board, or like it's its own platform. It's like playing on a console or something, right? Like, or it's an emulator,
Yeah.
right? But it's not. It's just a way to plug in an arcade game into your TV or monitor.
Hmm.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of, I think a lot of people don't know what a super gun is and haven't had really stop and think about it until
Yeah.
suddenly it's a main game at Evo and now they have to pay attention, right?
Yeah.
But the setups that have been at these majors the past few years that I've seen, and again, I don't know who's providing them, but they've been fine
Hmm.
and they've been pretty consistent. If you want to, if the picture is weird or the colors are bad, I'm sure, and you don't want to play on it, I don't know.
Yeah.
Ask whoever's running it and be like, "Can I get a different setup?" Maybe they'll be nice. I don't know. So I don't know. I don't think it's that controversial. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't really think it's I don't think it should stop anyone from going to Evo. I think people need
oh
to
no, no, no,
understand.
no. And I
Yeah,
don't think it
I
actually is.
think people need
And
to
I know for a
understand.
fact that Mustard was never intending to
Yeah.
actually cancel his Evo trip because of this. It was just a joke. People, relax. Oh my God, he was joking. He's still going Evo.
Yeah, in
When
fact,
I saw the Hado
yeah.
like jump in on that and be like, "Listen, if you want to cancel your trip, you can email this." It's like he was joking. He's going Evo. Just oh my God, relax.
Yeah, I think yeah, I don't think it should stop people from I don't think it should stop Third Strike, like again, like the hardcore Third Strike players, the people that have been playing the game. Like there's so many other different considerations that, someone would need to factor in as to whether or not they should attend Evo. I don't think
Yeah.
the fact that the game is going to be run on Superguns should be one of them. Um,
No, they've
but
been
but
run.
just
I
for
mean, they've
me,
been run on
yeah,
super guns for years,
yeah,
and it's been fine. It's been great. I mean, people are used to it. These hardcore third strike guys probably
yeah,
know this. I don't
mhm,
think. I don't think.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't think it's. I think it's a non-issue. I think it's. I would be very surprised if it actually is something that's blocking someone from attending
no,
or entering third strike or
mhm.
whatever.
Yeah, and now, but at the same time, like, is it like I don't know if I would go so far to say it's a non-issue, but I think you can also I think Third Strike, hardcore Third Strike players, just speaking on behalf of the scene, I think it's okay for us to be disappointed too that it's not on cab.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again,
Because like
you
I
do
was
what
saying
you're good.
before, yeah, like
Yeah.
I was saying before, and there's multiple reasons. Again, number one, going back to the history of Evo, for 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 a game that has been so monumental in building the FGC, just personally for me, as someone who loves Third Strike, it would have been nice to see the game played on again on this on cabs.
Right.
But again, at the same time, that shouldn't stop people from going to Evo. But also another thing too is like it kind of depends on like what we are expecting from Third Strike at Evo on a competitive level. Because whenever we think about the highest level of Third Strike, and I've said this many times in previous shows, I think Coop. And I don't know if you've ever
You think
participated in
what? I'm sorry.
Cooperation Cup.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And
Sure.
I
Of
don't
course.
know, have you ever participated in Cooperation Cup or
No, I've always wanted to. I've
Yeah.
always wanted to.
So
Someday maybe. But yeah, I love it.
yeah.
I love it.
And I wasn't sure how it was last year. Maybe, someone who did attend Cooperation Cup the one that they ran as part of the DreamHack event in Japan. I don't know
Yep.
how it was there, but for anyone who hopes to, and hopefully Cooperation Cup returns, but if it does return, and there are players who have never gone before and they would love to attend, because Cooperation Cup, I've gone on record saying this many times, hands down, best tournament experience I've ever had. Just because of
As an
her,
attendee,
yeah, yeah.
sure.
Um,
Yeah. I
but
think there's things
I
though, you
think
know what?
mhm,
Speaking on what we were talking about earlier about
yeah.
dragging things into modern day, they're also something that like I don't think if I had my druthers would do it that way. I wouldn't
Mhm,
keep I don't think there I think it's silly to keep your brackets on paper only. There I said it. You know, like I think it's like come on, there's got to be someone there who can do a nice stream.
yeah,
You know, a
yeah.
stream production could you know what I mean? There's things that it's like traditionally or the Japanese way of doing things. You know,
Mhm,
I'm not necessarily a big fan of, and I think that's fine too. Where you're like,
mhm,
okay, this is just another example of one of
yeah,
those things. At Fight Kingdom, I've really pushed for side by side setups.
mhm,
I like those better than the Japanese style, like the head to heads.
mhm,
I think it just adds another element to the competition if you have to sit next to the guy and you know um, on stage, and you know that's something that I'm not a fan of necessarily on like even Capcom Cup where it's they're sitting a mile away from each other and they got headphones on and they're like they might as well be at home. You know,
mhm,
I think that there's something that's I think that way is cooler. And so even
yeah,
though this is the traditional way, this is the Japanese way, I don't think that's necessarily a reason to do it.
mhm,
You know, I think there's impracticalities to
yeah,
these things too that can
yeah.
be changed. So
And speaking, kind of in that same vein, players who are interested in attending Cooperation Cup, if it ever were to return, and again, I don't know how it was at DreamHack, but they're going to be in for a rude awakening when it comes to controls, since we're talking about the controls,
yeah, right,
because the way that Cooperation Cup was run before, the reason why it's called Cooperation is because all those cabs are being sourced from different game centers. And
right,
the controls, the sticks in all in those cabs, at least when I went in 2017, it, there was like very little consistency when it
right,
came to the controls on the cabs.
right,
Some cabs had again, I'm not really sure exactly what, but you could definitely tell that there was a lot of variation as far as the quality and the condition of the sticks and buttons. But that kind of speaks to kind of again, what is the event trying to do here? As far as
right.
like
That's the unique flavor of their thing, right?
yeah,
Like I don't, you know, again, I wouldn't ever do my brackets only on paper,
mhm,
but this is their thing, and that's kind of like their, you know, putting the stickers up where they can pick their own, you know,
mhm,
for the night before where they you know can, you know, they get to seed themselves in the top
yeah,
eight or whatever.
yeah,
You know, I mean, again, down to even you know their weeklies are
yeah,
single elimination tournaments.
yeah,
Psychotic. Why would
yeah,
you ever do that? That's like that's their thing. It's
yeah,
you know, it's just it's their flavor, and everyone's
yeah.
gonna somebody running an event gets to kind of dictate that flavor. So whatever it is, you know, just
Yeah.
as long as you set the expectation.
And then another reason why I think it would be nice, if Third Strike was run on cab at Evo, is going
Yeah,
back to your earlier comment about how Street Fighter was so mainstream back then. Um, as a TO, you can't help but doom scroll through FGC Twitter, and you see these things. And I
sure.
saw, and I can't read, I didn't translate it, but I noticed that there had been like I saw a photo of a display at a Uniqlo store that had a Blast City. Like there was like a model standing next to a Blast City. I'm not sure if you know what I'm talking about, but
No,
like
I mean,
yeah,
I know
so
what
like
Uniflow and I know what Blast City is, but no,
yeah. And so the reason I mention that is because I think so much of why Third Strike continues to live on. It was a Tekken display. Yeah, it was for a Tekken display. Yeah, thanks, Mustard Back. The reason why I bring that up is because I think a large part of why Third Strike continues to resonate or continues to be popular is because it is, like you said, a remnant of that day old era. We
yeah,
kind of
oh
associate
yeah,
that with nostalgia. That's the reason why Evil's doing Third Strike and are going to do a retro game every year. It's part of that. it's part of that mythos of Third Strike, that it's a game that is played on cab, and
Yeah.
now it's something that newer generations are just kind of being exposed to. And and companies like Namco and Capcom, they recognize that. And so yeah, like, just kind of to wrap up this whole kind of Third Strike at Evo thing, should Third Strike players uh should the fact that Third Strike might be run on Supergun deter you from going to Evo to play Third Strike? No, it shouldn't, because Evo's going to have this huge platform, and I think it could only be good for the Third Strike scene to have more eyes on the game. And then
Yeah.
when the people come into the game, then we go, oh, okay, that's when they're going to start learning the history of the game. They're going to figure it
True.
out on their own, and so, like, not to sound too all new agey or anything, but I think what, like, Fight Kingdom and Jazzy, what, like, things that you and I do, it's we put our faith in the game, right? Like, we put our
Mm.
faith that the game is great, that it's timeless, that people are going to understand what makes it so great. And I think just having that platform at Evo to suck all these new players in, and then they're going to learn the history. Then they're going to learn, how the game, all of these nuances and all of these concerns that that you and I are very familiar with, being part of the scene for so long. They're going to learn all those things. We already see that now. I mean, I'm sure you have a lot of new generation players in
Yeah.
your scene that are picking up Third Strike. Like, why did they pick up Third Strike out of all of the millions and millions of distractions that young people could preoccupy themselves with why Third Strike? I think part of that is that mythos of Third Strike being that arcade game. So yeah, like, I don't think it should discourage players from going to Evo, but I think at the same time, we could still be kind of a little bummed out that it's not on arcade. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that there is there's a cultural component to the arcade roots of everything in fighting games that is so unique
Hmm.
when you compare them to any other genre of video game, and competitive video games especially,
Yeah.
where it didn't come up like any of the others,
Hmm.
as like people talk about esports versus FGC. I mean, that's to a degree that's really real, and a lot of that comes from the history, the culture, and part of that, a big part of that, of course, is arcades and all this hardware, the retro hardware. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that maybe Evo isn't really the kind of event that flavors itself with the arcade culture as much anymore because it's so big. It's got to appeal to so many people. It's got to bring in big money, and it's got so many new games involved. And it's a more of a mainstream kind of event.
Hmm.
So I think that there's things like with Jazzy and Fight Kingdom where this is our role, is saying we can have these kinds of events and they can have new games and they can have old games, but
Hmm.
this is going to be flavored. Keep using that word.
Hmm.
It's going
Yeah.
to be flavored with that arcade thing heavily, that culture thing heavily,
Yeah.
the way it used to be, the history of it. We're going to try to bring in significant community leaders from the past. We're going to try to, um, you know, like you said, we have faith in this game, and that means that we think it's worth bolstering.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
we are these pillars that we keep, strong. That a lot of these big corporate events can't do so much, even if they want to, probably. But like this is where we can come in and do this kind of thing, and so we, maybe it gets lost in the shuffle, and we end up on super guns instead of on cabs. Makes sense.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's why we're here. Is
Yeah.
because we don't want that getting lost, and we're not going to let it get lost. Because
Yeah.
look at this. Look how well Jazzy's been doing. Great.
Yeah. Like, I've always seen tournaments like Evo and Combo Breaker and CEO. Um, they're gateways. They're And we should be at the very least grateful that the people who are running these events, are running retro games, because
Yeah.
it's their way of, again, just kind of recognizing that FGC does have a history, and then we just kind of take it from there, right?
Right.
And that applies to any other game and any other scene. And it's just kind of up to, to guys like you to kind of, you know, carry on, that thing. Like, if someone gets introduced to Third Strike at Evo, after Evo, then what? Right? Like that, it
Right.
falls on us. And I think
Yeah.
that's, kind of what we need to do, kind of looking forward. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this conversation has been really awesome, Zafo. I would love to have you on like my own experience podcast to know, I know we didn't really talk enough about the Seattle scene, especially the Seattle Third Strike scene,
I
but I
would
would
love
love to,
to.
yeah, I would
Yeah.
love to welcome you back, whether it's on my podcast or Jazzy Talk. But before we get out of here, I did want to just again, kind of do one last shill for Fight Kingdom. And so again, Fight Kingdom, May 3rd through 5th, 2024, Everett, Washington. Sign up now, fightkingdomfgc.com. Besides the Jazzy Third Strike ranking event, there's going to be a lot of other old school and new school games. And so, definitely consider making it out to that event. Zafo, good luck with Fight Kingdom. Good luck with all of the other stuff that you're doing. You're welcome back on Jazzy Talk anytime, especially if you have any more updates. Maybe you can come back, maybe, towards the end of the season to do a
Yeah.
little bit more.
A few months before the event, so yeah, I'd love to come back.
Yeah, but it's great, that we kind of get the word out now so that people can start making plans to go to Fight Kingdom. And so, yeah, I appreciate the time again, Azafo. Appreciate everyone in the chat for tuning in. And so, we'll be back next Tuesday with another episode of Jazzy Talk. And so, appreciate all of you, and I'll see you all next week. Take care, everyone.